Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I hope that at the end of the show that you will subscribe to this channel, that you will hit the like button if you do indeed like tonight's show, and that you will leave a comment on whatever platform that you're watching this on. My show is all about celebrating artists and their body of worth. How do they get from point A to point B and beyond? It's all about the trajectory of a career. It's not gossipy, it's about celebrating. And I am so excited that tonight I am going to be celebrating Kiki Ebsen. I have been in the world of Kiki Ebsen, listening to the YouTube clips. You have a Wednesday night show that I still think that you're still doing, putting your music out to the world, and just being wonderful at this incredible time that we're living in right now. I do want to mention, sadly but truly, that today marks 398 days since our theaters shut down. And I want to ask how you're doing really in the midst of this crazy world we find ourselves in.
Myself personally, I'm doing exceptionally well,
Great.
all things considered. I mean, I'm mainly a live performer. So the frustration of not being able to go out and perform it's really been hard, which is why I set up my Wednesday night live streams. When this first started happening a year ago, I just sat down at the piano every night for like 30 days in a row, and 30 nights, and just played and talked and just played whatever came out of my heart. And and we were all kind of happy and sad and crazy and scared and, all together, So it was very therapeutic for me. I had just finished doing a show about, that I do about my dad, the one woman show that I have. We had done that in the fall, and then the pandemic, it was just a couple months later. So had I not gotten that out, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So I'm grateful for that opportunity, but it's just devastating right now what's going on for our live performers and for the theater, for the clubs. And I can't even fathom, what everyone is going through. But I have to say I've stayed very creative. I've gone very on a very personal, very spiritual journey as well. So I think I'm going to come out of this a much stronger, centered person and performer as well.
Well, I'm glad you said that. I think of this time that we're going through as a pause for us to stop and really have a greater appreciation for the things that we take for granted. We take for granted that live theater is there, that we're going to go to a Broadway show or a concert. We're going to buy our tickets and it's just going to be there. And we're learning that the things that we take for granted are not always there. I want to ask you, since you're bringing that up, where does your spirituality come from? Is this something that you've always lived with, or is this something that has developed as you've gotten older?
Well, both. I am a firm believer that we all are spiritual beings. We just need to discover that. I think it's nothing that you gain, you uncover. You uncover it. So it's like the light that we all have that connects us, that it just gets brighter as we peel away the layers of the darkness and the things that cover that up. I have always been a huge lover of nature and animals. And I grew up, in a beautiful surrounding with lots of animals, and being around that. My parents really were that way as well, whether they realized it or not. They exposed their children to a lot of beauty in that aspect. So as I got older, I discovered yoga. And more than just the practice of doing a downward dog and all that. There's a whole spirituality that surrounds that, involves personal ethics and how you treat the world around you and how you live. And I'm discovering more and more every day. I'm deep in that practice right now, and it's truly changed my entire life. And had I not had this pause, I don't think I would have dedicated the time that it takes to develop a real spiritual practice. So I'm grateful.
You're a songwriter yourself. Has the past year impacted the way that you're writing your music now?
Well, I actually during this year I was completing a record that the songs had been written, so we spent a lot of the time. It was just an opportunity to get the mixing done and the
Mhm.
overdubs. So I didn't really create any new music per se because whether it's a pandemic or not, and when I'm writing, I'm gonna hole up somewhere anyway. So it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like when I go into writing mode, nothing else exists, um so we actually just took the opportunity to finish up our record, and my husband and I produced it and he mixed it, and so we just got it out, and it's out now. It came out in January. It's called Fill Me Up. So we're really proud of that. And yeah, it's just a great opportunity to, as for creative artists, oh, we don't have a gig, well, let's go, make
Uh,
something to finish
Is your
up.
husband in the business as well?
Well, we met in the business when I was a keyboard player and a singer. I was on tour with a singer named Tracy Chapman,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and
Wow.
he was working in the sound company. He was a sound engineer. So we met, and then we both had our careers in that touring industry. And he went on to be production manager, and then he quit and to be a fireman, and now he's a fire chief.
Well, you live in
15 years later,
California? My
we live
heart
in
goes.
California. Yeah, yeah,
I
we
was
live in
just
California.
hearing that they're thinking that this may be a very intense season for the fires in California. I'm praying that that's not the case. And you also, reading your bio, you lived in Malibu for a while, and I used to go on a retreat in the canyons of Malibu
Mhm,
on Mulholland Drive
mhm.
every summer for 15 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was so dry, and the place that I went to unfortunately burned to the ground 2 years ago. So, which
Wow,
is
well, that we went
heartbreaking
through
to
the
me.
Woolsey that was the Woolsey fire, I'm
Yes,
sure. I bet my husband was, over there in that canyon helping, protect structures, but it was really hard difficult, and we went through that fire as well. We didn't lose our house, thank goodness, because
thank
'cause I'm in
God.
that house right now, but it was intense and very difficult, and I think every year at this point is a difficult year in Southern California for fires.
Now, you mentioned earlier your father, and for those who don't know, Buddy Ebsen was your father, Nancy Wolcott, your mother. And I know that this was his second marriage. You were born into this already established family. And I always like to go back to the 5-year-old self, Kiki. You were Kirsten, am I
Mhm.
correct?
Yep.
So growing up as 5-year-old Kirsten, before the layers of the world are being put upon you, can you take us back to the 5-year-old self and what your life was like at that point in your life?
Oh, it was it was awesome. Well, we lived, at that time when I was 5, we were living in Balboa Island, which is down in Newport Beach near Laguna Beach. And my
Gorgeous.
dad's a sailor, so he
Mhm.
wanted to be near his boat, and we lived in this little bungalow on the bayfront, 530 South Bayfront, and just swimming and sailing and playing sponge tag on the beach. And, it was really, really fun. And then my parents bought a ranch a few years later. And, now we have horses, and we're going back and forth between horses and the beach. And I mean, that's idyllic. I mean, I have a pony and I mean, it's like, but,
The
of
dream
course,
of every little boy and girl.
it is. It's kind of the dream. Now, of course, I had 3 older sisters which
Mhm.
could pose a little bit of a problem. They like to, order me around and tell me what to do, but it
Well,
was
that's their job.
it was okay. So we had a lot of fun, and my parents were, really, hands-on. My dad, he'd build fences and mend and repair things around the ranch, and we didn't really have staff. I mean, it was
Mhm.
like he really, like, rolled up his sleeves and he taught us how to shoot BB guns and eventually 22s, and we would fend off the rattlesnakes, and it was just in fires, a lot of fires back
Mhm.
then too, evacuations. But he was chopping wood all the time, and yeah, he was really into it. My mother had a garden, and it was really cool. Like I really wasn't that. I mean, I knew of his celebrity, but we were not immersed in it. We didn't have
Well, I
our
wanted to ask you, when was the first time that you were aware of the Buddy Ebsen that the rest of the world knew about?
Well, it was the first time I saw him on the Beverly Hillbillies, and, I talk about it in my show. It's really funny because, we just didn't my brother and I are the youngest of
Mhm.
there's 5 in this family and 2 daughters from my dad's first marriage, so we came along at the very end, and we just thought, we sat down at the premiere of or the first performance of, Beverly Hillbillies, and it was a Wednesday night, 8 o'clock on CBS, And there was our dad with a mustache and with a hat. And, like we're like, is this like Halloween? I mean, like, what is he doing on this box? And we're like 4 and 5, I think. And we're like, okay, interesting. We didn't know it was like special or different. We thought all dads were on television. Like, this is what dads do. They go
Mhm.
on television. So when the kids at school started to single us out and go, no, that's different. It's special. Then you start to go, oh, you're special. But
Mhm.
it's weird. I mean, fame through osmosis or fame through somebody else's fame is it's a little bit off-putting because you're not sure
Mhm.
why you're getting that kind of attention, you know. But the funniest story about that is that my brother and I guess my dad worked a lot during the day. We didn't see him. We figured if he wasn't at home, he might be on that box, right? So we would turn the TV on during the day and look at
Dad, where are you?
yeah, no, we would, exactly. We'd go,
I
"Okay, not
love
there,
this.
not there, not there, not there." And we'd watch shows and, like, think it's him, I'm not sure, and then we finally found a show, and we knew it was him, and it came on in the afternoon at the same time. And after a couple weeks, my mother started listening to our conversation. She's like, "What are you guys doing?" Because we were talking about the character, and we go, "Well, we're watching Dad on the television." And she goes, "That's Lawrence Welk."
You thought that he was playing all these other characters.
And we thought, well, he looked enough like him, and he had and a 1 and a 2.
And a one and a two, and the bubbles running around.
Bubbles. And his hair slicked back, I thought that it could be him, big smile, Yeah.
Now, but you, I mean, and when did you begin to? And I love the fact that you have created a show about your dad, but he had a phenomenal career long before the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah.
And when you started delving into that aspect of his life.
Well, I really didn't appreciate it, of course, as always, until I was much older.
Mhm, mhm.
My dad tried very much to get us interested in what he had done prior. But I'm a child of the 70s and I grew up in rock and roll. And, for me, it was all about rock music. And my dad was trying to get me singing lessons with Joe Stafford. And I'm trying to get him to listen to Alice Cooper. And he's like, who's she? And I'm like, who's he? And so it's this very confusing time for us. And as I got older, we all knew about his career as a dancer, and we'd seen
Mhm,
Broadway Melody of 1936 and Born to Dance and all those, and Shirley Temple's, Captain January.
mhm,
But it wasn't until I got older, he always wanted me to sing jazz, and of course I wanted to sing pop music. And after he passed away, I thought, what a sweet thing would it be to make a jazz record and use songs from the shows that he was in, and go back and look at all those
mhm,
movies and really kind of get in deep. And at the same time, I had found a box of his old scripts in my mother's house, like after she passed away. And they were scripts like Yokel Boy, the original Yokel Boy script from the
mhm,
1930s that's like written on a typewriter and which is a big Broadway musical with Phil Silvers and the
mhm.
Canova family. Um, and then I found Born to Dance, his script from Born to Dance, and I found his music book from The Wizard of Oz, and I went, this is extraordinary. So even though
Well,
I had
again,
heard
I mean, some people may not know, but your father was originally cast in The Wizard
as,
of Oz,
as
and it almost killed him.
I know,
So yes, so luckily, see, everything happens. He was supposed to live so that you and I could sit here and talk tonight.
exactly.
Yes. So, but he was in the original company of The Wizard of Oz. I want to ask you, because you talk about you being a child of the 70s and everything, and obviously you may or not be really appreciating his history at that point. But was he appreciating the music that was happening at that time, as in the music, in the way that the business was changing?
Well, you mean like pop music or the
Yes.
way the business, you know, he always believed, and he's not too far off, that the standards were where it was at. So he didn't really, appreciate the music that I enjoyed and the music that I like to write. Actually,
Hmm.
he didn't really get my songs and, didn't really get where I was going as an artist. He's like, Kick, you gotta sing the standards and you gotta play jazz and all that. And I'm like, all right, I get it. We're like almost 50
Hmm.
years apart there. So, but he'd certainly had no problem poking fun at rock music, as you'll see pictures of him dressed up in his gold lame outfit and an electric guitar and things
Yeah,
like
I've seen those.
that. So I think that's what he thought about it. Honestly, he
Mhm.
really he loved the era of music that he grew up in, and rightly so. It's pretty fabulous.
Absolutely. And when did the seed happen for you? When did you decide that you were going to pursue? Because it didn't come too much later, am I correct? That you decided to pursue a career in this business on any level? Or was it something that you dreamed about as a kid?
No, never dreamed about it. I I never wanted to be, like, famous or I mean,
Mhm.
it was because he was so famous at that time growing up, it was just there was so much, attention whenever we'd go out, and it was uncomfortable for me. So, what I did wanna do, though, is play music, and I wanted
Mhm.
to play in a band. That's really all I wanted to do. I didn't even think I wanted to sing or anything like that. Because understand my mother had a theater, so she was an actress and a producer and a
Mhm.
director in community on a community level. My sister was an actress, so it was crowded in my family in that area, and it was competitive. I'll say right now they competed, for attention in that world, but music was totally mine. So I could
Yeah.
go and play the piano. Nobody was fighting me for that piano at all. So I just like to immerse myself in melodies, and then I wanted to play in a band, and eventually I went to school. I went to Cal Arts and got a degree in classical voice, which was
Mhm.
interesting, and then hit the road playing keyboards with these huge pop artists. And
Amazing. And how did the first one come about?
oh, very
Were you very this is a question that I ask a lot of artists. Were you ambitious in terms of going after what you wanted?
I think
Or were you one of I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was ambitious in the sense that I set a very strong intention. So I kind of, in a way, bumbled around a little bit, was in and out of college and finally got
Mhm.
my degree for my mother. I'll be right honest, because she wanted me to graduate. And I never really planned on pursuing an opera career. I just had a good voice for it, and it was not that difficult, to do what they wanted me to do. Um, in order to achieve that degree, and I appreciate it because I love classical music. I was exposed to a whole catalog that I never knew before. But once I left, I entered a competition for it was like a star search for a college entrance and graduates. They had just graduated, and I won it. It was a national competition um, called the American Collegiate Talent Showcase. And it was just so random, and all of a sudden I was in a position to be able to consider myself as the lead singer, and I had written the song and the whole thing. But from that experience, I managed to get this totally different way of getting in the door. I happen to be very good with computers and musical instruments. And at the time in the mid 80s, it was called MIDI, which
That's
is
right. Yes.
musical instrument digital interface.
Mhm.
And the group Chicago needed somebody who could operate their instruments and do this from behind the stage, off stage. So I had a keyboard and I had computers and I had samplers, and I would play along with the band in real time. And I would operate everything from strings and French horns to vocal samples, sequences, all from like the Wizard of Oz, all from
Mhm.
behind the stage to augment their sound.
That's
And
amazing.
it was
Wow.
amazing because it was an
Mhm.
international touring act. It was a position that only 3 people I knew had. One was with Earth, Wind& and Fire, and the other one was with Madonna. So it was a new position that was being created, and I was there at the forefront, and I worked for them for 2 years. I did a record with them, and the thing was is that I wasn't I knew people who could have taken the job, but they're like, "Well, I wanna be on stage. I wanna be, in the
Well, I
band."
was gonna ask you if was this fulfilling for you, being, behind the scenes? You were very much part of the scene, but not being on stage, were you getting the same fulfillment, or were you itching to get out there in the spotlight, so to speak?
Well, 2 things. I was really thrilled to have the job. And so what I had done prior to that to get a job, to look for work, I was writing letters to management companies going, "Hi, I'm Kiki Ebsen, and I'm a keyboard player, and I really want to play with your band." And, that's not how you're gonna get a gig. It's like, I see the little letters. I'm very interested in touring with, whatever the biggest band was, Madonna,
Of
whatever.
course.
And I would send them off to management companies because that's who
Hmm.
chooses the touring bands for these artists. And it was never going to happen. So when I got the opportunity it was through a singer named Michael Cimbello who had that song Maniac.
Hmm.
And it was through that circle that I got into the Chicago gig. So I started thinking, okay, it's who you know, clearly. And when I could get a reference, a name that I could drop, then you cold call and go, so and
Hmm.
so said that you're looking for a keyboard player. And that's how I got my next job, which was with the singer Al Jarreau.
Oh my God! Wow.
And I called them every month for like a year going, hey, I hear you, because they knew that their keyboard player was going to leave eventually. She,
Hmm.
she had a
Hmm.
record coming out. And I just got the gig. I stayed on it, got the audition. I auditioned for Ricky Minor, who is a really famous
Hmm.
music director now. And he was our bass player at the time. So it was pretty exciting. And then from there, I played, everyone from Belinda Carlisle to James Ingram to Boz Scaggs to Michael McDonald, Christopher Cross, Peter Cetera. Yeah.
Just interesting names to drop there.
Yeah, just a few.
No, no, it's
And
just
Tracy Chapman.
no. I think it's absolutely phenomenal that I mean, it's like you've created your own career path in terms of moving forward, and that's what I'm all interested in here. And then you start your and while this is all happening, are you writing at the same time?
Yes, I'm writing music, and I never really knew what I was going to do with the music that I was writing. But when I was working with Chicago, I would have all day basically to sit around the stadium and play on my keyboards because I'm behind the stage. I got my headphones, and so all these
Mhm.
songs started coming out. And in the early '90s, I started playing around town in some jazz in local clubs, and a producer, that was producing a player named Boney James was playing in
Mhm.
my band, and his name was Jim Oppenheim at the time. He's a big famous sax player now. His producer came in, said, "Love your songs. I want to produce your record," and that was in 1993. And then from then on, I just started, making my own. I made that record on a label, and then I started making my own after that. And I have about eight.
Now, as you were writing this music, were you thinking of someone else performing these songs, or was it always in your head, this is what I'm going to do?
Well, I was always thinking about me performing them because they're very personal,
Mhm.
and I just
Mhm.
figured that I didn't see anyone else doing it, although I'd love for anybody who wants to cover my songs now. Is
I know
anybody?
there are a lot of singers who are watching tonight.
Yeah,
So,
seriously, I've got a lot of gems in there. Um, yeah, no, I wasn't really considering myself as being anything more than I was very in the moment with this music and material. So they were personal, heartfelt, like a little diary entries, and they still are. They also
mhm.
have been a snapshot of my life, as I transitioned from here to there and to there and to there, and it shows my growth, my spiritual growth as well as my emotional and mental growth. I think as a musician.
In a moment, since you are in the right spot, I'm going to put you on the spot to play something for us.
Oh,
But before we get there, I want to ask when you started doing the club circuit, the nightclub circuit, cabaret rooms, how did you find your audience at first, or how did they find you? Was it because of the connections that you had made throughout your career up to that point? Did they know what to expect coming to see an evening with Kiki Ebsen? How did you put your first show together?
Oh, well, the very first show, I used to play a lot at a club called Le Cafe, which is in Studio City. It was a really well-known music hang. All the musicians hung out there. So really, I'd already been going there a lot to see other musicians, and I had played with a few other bands there. So the network just, it wasn't a big room. So when I was booked to play there, um, people they were curious, and a lot of them were my friends. And I think it's the type of room where the band was probably the members of the the band there were more people in the band than there were in the audience. There was probably 9 people in my band. Um, but they were all my songs, and I'm very
Mhm.
real on stage, and I tell these stories, and I just kind of go off a lot like my Wednesday night shows, where I just go off on a tangent about something, and it's very unpretentious. And I think the word just got out, and I developed a really nice following at that club So those were some really happy times there.
Now, I did make a request to you that I'm not going to ask for right now. I'm going to save that for later because I'd love to hear one of your original pieces, if you don't mind
Oh
sharing with us
gosh,
right
I
now.
don't mind. Geez, what shall I play? I'm gonna play just one of my favorite songs. I sort of one of my go-tos, and it's called "Love Wait for Me," and it's off a record I put out. Um, gosh, I don't know. It's called "The Beauty Inside." I put it out about a decade ago, and it's a song about two people having to go their separate ways, but they still have great amount of love for each other as they try to grow and work things out. And it's kind of, I always, the picture I get is that they're at a corner and they go down these different roads, and then they make another turn and they meet at a crossroads over here somewhere down the line.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called "Love Wait for Me."
Thank you.
I've traveled far and wide, and soon I'll be by your side. Just a few stops to make along the way. That's where I am today. Love wait for me, 'cause I need to know that you won't let go. Love wait for me. Love wait for me. In a garden we prayed so long ago, now it's hidden beneath this snow. And a new life just trying hard to grow, but the ice is melting slow. Love wait for me. These beautiful flowers soon be ours. Love wait for me. Love wait for me. Love grows oh so slowly. We might take all our lives to find my one and only. Love grows slowly.
Wow. 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 That is so gorgeous. I
Oh,
mean, what was the inspiration for this song?
well, now that you mention it,
Mhm.
he's sitting right here, my husband. Uh,
Good.
we were getting separated about what, 11 years ago, 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Well, we were on the verge of it. We hadn't decided. We met and got married in night. You hope you don't mind me telling you this story. I tell it to millions of people when I said it the song. No, it's really inspiring because a lot of people
What's
get
his name, by the way?
Steve.
Steve. So, Steve, forgive us.
Yeah. Well, it's important. I think that people know that relationships can be a struggle, and they're beautiful, and they're worth fighting for, and they're worth
Mhm.
working on, and being, you know, in there, staying with it. And
Mhm.
we got married in 1999, and it was 11 years later. We were struggling, and we were on the verge of a separation, and I was writing the songs for this record called The Beauty Inside, which was about my transformation, but it was also about what was going on around me. And so there were some relationship oriented songs. But really, Love Wait for Me, it wasn't about blaming somebody. It was about going, we need to go our separate ways, and grow and figure out what's important to us, and just grow as human beings. So,
Well, this year with the pandemic, they're saying that either couples are coming closer together or they're drifting apart because we're spending so much time with one another,
oh yeah.
more so than any other time in our lives. How is that, if you don't mind my asking? And again, Steve, forgive me. How the past year has impacted the two of you?
Well, I'll tell you, because I just wanted to wrap it up that we did separate for about 5 years, and then we got back together about 4 years ago. 5 years ago? 5 years ago. Anyway, so I think this last year has been extraordinary because we also, Steve worked on my dad's show with me as well as a co-producer and as a technical advisor and a sound man and the whole thing. So we work a lot. We work really closely together,
Mm-hmm.
and we're both a little bit crazy genius, in our own worlds. Like, he's amazing. I mean, like, so talented as a sound man, and he can fix anything and build anything. And he's an amazing, fireman and now fire chief. And I seem to be able to, do whatever I seem to set out to do. I wrap
Mm-hmm.
my head around. So we have this sort of thing that works well together, but also can be very opposing, because we
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of stories that we make up in our head about stuff. And, just what people just um, sometimes have a hard time when you find yourself with that person day in and day out, and you're used to having a certain amount of space. You can either go, okay, I need this space over here, and please
Mm-hmm.
respect that. And then there's also a softening that happens when
Mm-hmm.
you're like me. I grew up like on my own. So I have to learn to soften into having somebody around me. So there was a balancing act for me. And we're a constant work in progress.
No, that's
We're, we're there.
as we all are. Well, I have to ask, did you write a follow-up song when you did get back together?
He's shaking his head, going, "No." On my new record, I have a really great record called "Fill Me Up" that we just put out, and there's a song called "Change My Mind," and that's a song that I will dedicate to Steve because it is, it really, it really is our relationship for sure. I will never change my mind about you, and life deals you nasty blows, and where it ends, I just don't know. But if you be kind, be nice, don't be cruel, I'll never change my mind about you.
Well,
And
would
it's
you like to
very,
share that with us now?
huh?
Would you like to share it with us now?
Oh, this song. Well, I don't have it under my. Uh, I can give you
Uh,
another one off that record.
please do, and you'll come back and play it for me another time, I
I
hope.
will absolutely.
Okay, great. So I want to go back to the your show opens and you get a record deal. Up to that point, you basically have been paving your own path. Someone comes along, they want to do the record deal. How did that impact your life, both positively and if there are any negatives that surrounded that? We learn as we go along. How did it change your life?
Well, it was great to have the opportunity, in a budget, to go into a studio. And so that gave me, I had a lot of freedom, to be able to go in with musicians that I wanted to use. And I mean, the typical stuff. When you get a record deal, they usually want to get their own musicians. The producer wants to
Hmm.
use his people, and I insisted on using my band, so I really
Hmm.
stuck up for them. Um, one of the funny things is that I didn't want to put my face on the cover. I'm a painter, so I painted this, like, I had this painting that I wanted to put on the cover, and they reluctantly let me do that, even
Hmm.
though putting your face on there is supposed to sell more records and all that. So they gave me a bit of freedom. I they weren't quite sure how to sell it, how to promote it. And at that time in 94, there were four different, I was doing well on the contemporary jazz chart, but
Hmm.
the formats were about to split, and one was going to turn into smooth jazz and the other one was triple A, which is where Sheryl Crow and all that Lilith Fair, those artists, those
Hmm.
female, Paula Cole and Sarah McLachlan, they kind of went that direction. And I stayed with smooth jazz because the producer I was using, Paul Brown, is like the baby face of
Hmm.
smooth jazz, thinking that would help my career. Unfortunately, that format did not embrace my voice for some reason. They just didn't. They embraced Anita Baker and Sade and Enya and people like that. But so I really floundered around for a while, and I ended up getting dropped from that label, which was a good thing because the owner of the record label is you know it's one of those, like, characters out of a movie, just a real
Oh,
shyster.
we've dealt with them. I know many of them.
Yeah, a real jerk. I'm not at all afraid to say he's a total jerk. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad I didn't have to make contractually, I didn't have to make a record for him.
Well, I
But
have a friend, and he says rejection is God's protection, and I always believe that. And I always say that it's you move on to bigger and better things.
you know, as an artist, I'll have to say that having the freedom, I'd rather be unknown and free to write and do what I want than be totally famous and have to write for another person. I mean, some of the artists that I've worked for, were prisoners of their contracts. Tracy Chapman, total prisoner,
Hmm.
signed a terrible deal. And I think that New Beginning record, honestly, was supposed to be a throwaway record to get out of the deal, and it turned into this,
Hmm.
like, huge comeback. But I think there's so much anger, and I had anger about my first record because he wouldn't sell the record back to me. Like, he wouldn't give me the freedom to run with it. He just held on to it, which I think is just so mean. And I still sing the songs and all that, but it had a bad taste. I wanted to quit, actually,
Hmm.
after that.
Hmm.
And I tried, but more songs came out. So I ended up making records on my own, and I tried getting back into the formats again, tried smooth jazz, and they again said, no, thank you, we're not
Hmm.
interested. So I just decided to just do whatever I wanted to do. And I was touring nonstop, so I wasn't even like I stopped long enough to promote a record on my own because, so and so would call. I worked with Christopher Cross for 2 decades, and
Hmm.
I just wanted to work. I mean, there's something about my personality is if I'm working in the industry, I feel good. I'm not going to starve just to, I can write songs and play anytime I want, but being able to work and, like, earn a living and to me was really important. And I enjoyed it. I loved, like I said, I just wanted to play in a band
Oh, that's wonderful.
originally.
I want to go back to your father for just a moment. I'd like to learn what lessons you learned from him as far as fame is concerned. The impact that he made on your career and the impact that he made on your personal life.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, I think he went through different stages in his life of what it meant to be famous. I think he worked extremely hard to be an entertainer, and he really loved it. He
Hmm.
loved dancing, and he worked. I mean, talk about ambitious. I mean, he went to New York with like $25 in his pocket and a letter of recommendation, and went around to theaters and said, "Hey, can I get a job?" Too tall for the chorus. He was kicked out of his first job, and what he taught me, is really just to stay with it
Hmm.
and press on. He's got that Calvin
Hmm.
Coolidge quote, permaplaqued for each one of his kids. It's like the only thing basically that will get you to where you want to be is hard work and dedication and
Hmm.
determination. That being said, I believe that his happiest moments were on his sailboat.
Mm.
I do believe he did not spend as much time on his boat as he would have liked to. And what I've learned is not to want that kind of situation so badly that you're going to give up the real things that are important to you. And for me, those things are, my relationships, my family, my where I live, which is in nature. I work with horses. I work with people
Hmm.
and horses in a very natural setting. That feeds my soul and my spirit, just the way I think the ocean fed my dad's spirit. And I think he didn't get enough of that. And then he had to work very hard for his family, to take care of his family, because he had 5 kids now, and he had this lifestyle, right? That
Hmm. Hmm.
happens. So, but I think he really just taught me to just be very dedicated and work very hard at what you want, and don't take no for an answer. He certainly didn't.
And who are some of the other mentors in your life that really have helped shape who you are, both as an artist and as a human being?
Oh heavens. Um, well, I don't know. Well, I think being in my relationship, my day-to-day relationship
Yes.
shapes me. I am a better person because of who I'm married to. I think.
Hmm.
I think if you're with the right person, they will shape you into the person that you should become due to their love
Hmm.
and support. Um, a lot of the artists that I've worked for, I was very inspired by Al Jarreau, and even though he was kind of a wacky guy, his artistry was impeccable.
Hmm.
Was quite something, and I loved being exposed to people like Michael McDonald, who just, the music just spills from his hands and his mouth, and just this beautiful melodies, um, and I think that I don't know. I think I came into this whole thing with a very strong center, and
Hmm.
having been brought up in my family where you kind of really had to hold your own. So I just learned a great deal by just living life pretty honestly, and realizing kind of when that sounds strange, but like when the game is over, like when you have reached rock bottom, wherever it is you are, being willing to crack yourself wide open and rebuild without judgment. So there are a few times in my life where I've just been emotionally just hammered, and either by career, by losing a job that I'd had for a long time, and like, what am I going to do now, or being just emotionally kind of devastated. And instead of going, well, I'm just going to drink myself to, or whatever, like self-medicating, I'm just going to seize this and start doing things that scare me and frighten me. And that's kind of when my touring life ended, because there's a shelf life for that stuff. I just went, fine, I'm going to be making my own records. I'll make my first jazz record. I'm going to write a show and, star in it. And I'm going to start dancing. I mean, I'm just going to do all these things and just go, life is now, and life is precious. It's really, really precious. So,
Amen. I
yeah.
want to talk about the show that you did create about your father.
Mhm.
Beyond the love, obviously, that you have for your father, what was the impetus for you to put this story on stage and share it with other people?
Well, initially, I was so amazed. I was by what I'd found in that trunk, and I was so moved by it. And there were just like tons of pictures, beautiful pictures from the era, and his letters. I was reading his letters about it. He was talking about how someone, I can't remember what show it was, but he was like, me and Fanny, Fanny Bryce. Me and Fanny are the only ones who don't have a cold, and everyone else is sick, and da, 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 da. And he goes on, and he's writing his parents, about his day to day, stuff, and like, and that Shirley Temple, she's a little quip. I think he called her a little quip. I don't know what that means, but she's like sharp. She's a real sharp little
Yes,
cat. He
yes.
goes on about how she's got 100 rabbits at the studio. They keep multiplying, and she's going to buy a ranch, and she's going to put her rabbits on a ranch, and anyway, it just in his handwriting, I was so touched, and I felt so close to him. And I thought, well, if I didn't know about this stuff, and I'd only heard about the Wizard of Oz stuff as an adult, he
Mhm,
didn't tell us,
mhm,
so there's a stoicism about
mhm,
it.
mhm,
He didn't tell us a lot of these stories. So I learned a lot about him. And I thought, well, the show came out of a record that I had written, And as I had not written, but I had done called Scarecrow Sessions, which were all these standards from his show. And when I did the show, which was more of a cabaret show, I would tell the stories in between. I'd tell the story about the Wizard of Oz. I'd tell this, stories of growing up and going to the Beverly Hillbillies set. And, they're really charming little vignettes, about my family and about what I remembered of him. And people are like, God, that's such a great show. And then my brother got involved and he put together these great multimedia images. And we had all these pictures behind us. And then we got some movies, little clips. And then one thing led to another. And a couple of years ago when we did it, we put it on stage, and I learned to dance, a couple of his dance routines. I brought in a character that played my dad when he was a younger man, and we had this incredible we had a reconciliation because actually growing up, we had drifted apart, and my parents had split up, and there were some things that happened, between my parents that were difficult for the family to handle, including myself as a 12-year-old girl, discovering things about him, where he's not the guy you thought he was, and that affected me as a child. And I didn't realize how much until I got older and had to sort of come to terms with, behavior that you might have that your parents had. I mean, you sort of identify like, well, whoa, what is all this stuff? So it was really cathartic to explore that and find just the right things to say.
You feel that by doing this also, because I'm thinking of my next question with you, that this also humanized your father.
Yes.
In a way that you probably had not done so prior to sitting down and starting to put an arc or a shape to his life into an hour's evening.
For sure. Because he was, he's Buddy Ebsen. And I'm this tiny little person. And there he is, he just walks in the room and he's like, hi, and he's exactly what you would think. I mean, he was like larger than life. And even though we had a relationship, it was still Buddy Ebsen. So for me, it did humanize him, but I wanted to make sure that whatever I did in the show honored his career and who he was in his heart, and showed just again that we're all human. And we had a vulnerable moment. We had some tense times that ended up reconciling before he passed away in a beautiful way, a beautiful transcendent sort of way that people really get moved by, regardless of who he is, just the story of it, reconciling with your father, father-daughter, any time you reconcile with a parent, it's a big deal, especially before they pass away.
What did you learn about yourself personally beyond him putting this show together? And of course, you're looking back not only at your father's life, but I'm assuming that you're looking back very much at your own life up to this point. So what did you really learn about yourself putting this show together?
Well, I could do it. It was a big deal.
I love your answers.
I put I had a lot of limiting stories growing up, a lot of limiting stories. I can't do that. I am this, I am that, I am not that. I decided I wasn't an actor. I was a musician. This labels you put on yourself for no reason. I didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want to upset my mother or my sister, by going into the profession of being an actor, because my sister really did say, like, at one point, if you become an actress, I'll kill you. Now, that didn't really mean she was going to kill me, but, it's like, don't do this, and I was like, okay, not a problem. I have no interest in it. So what I found is I had a lot of ability that I think my parents wanted to bring out, but they didn't quite know how to really. They just wanted me to do the things they wanted me to do, like my mom wanted me to sing opera, my dad wanted me to sing jazz. And if I went outside that box, they didn't quite know how to appreciate it, if you know what I mean. So I gave myself permission to do anything. Anything.
Well, obviously, you are a great writer. Have you written beyond songwriting? Did you keep journals growing up? Have you ever kept a journal? Have you ever thought of putting your story into a book?
Well, yes. I have thought about it, and I have a lot of journals and I have a lot of thoughts about it. So I'm sure at some point, as I gather it all up, together, I got to get on that. Definitely.
Well, we started this conversation, and I'm going to go back to the show about your father in a few moments, because I do have a request tonight, as you know. But Looking back over just this past year, since our theater shut down and the concert halls and everything, beyond the obvious, what is the biggest impact that this year has had on you? We talked about the spirituality, everything. What changes have happened internally within you that you think you will definitely be carrying on beyond COVID?
Wow. Well, I will. I have a. It is a huge thing. This spiritual practice, this yoga practice that I do every single day, will continue on, and it centers me. I really take stock in what I put in my body, in terms of what I eat and what I drink.
Mm-hmm.
I There's a clarity that's come out of this that I don't want to give up, um, and I don't want to spend any time uh, being unhappy or ungrateful for the blessings in my life. I just life is too short. There's just no reason for it for
That's
me.
beautiful. That's great.
So I just want to play. I want to be creative and play music and perform and touch people through the work that I do, either with the horses or just in conversation or just in
Mhm.
example. I love it. I love doing that. So yeah.
And looking at your body, I'm all about celebrating a person's body of worth. Looking over your father's career, do you have a favorite performance of his?
Oh gosh, I'm just gutted by Breakfast at Tiffany's.
I was hoping you were going to say that because Breakfast at Tiffany's has a very special place for me. When I got married, Moon River was sung at our wedding.
Uh-huh.
It was my grandmother's favorite song. She told me before she passed away that anytime I heard this song, that she would be nearby. The film came out the year I was born. His performance, and I sat down and I watched it again a few weeks ago on Turner Classic Movies when we're looking back for obvious reasons, with all due respect to Mickey Rooney's performance in that film, that people are looking at it through different eyes right now. But your father's performance in that film touches chords, of hope and holding on to the past and moving forward, that I think are just brilliant. We are going to wrap up for just a moment. Kiki, I am such a fan of yours. I want to thank Warren Kroom for suggesting this interview. And I've gone back and I've been listening to your music, and I'm there for you. And anytime that you need a platform or you just want to come, please, you always have a welcome spot here. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And before we go, if you did enjoy tonight's show, once again, please subscribe to Richard Skipper Celebrates on YouTube. Hit the like button and leave a comment on YouTube. That really helps with the analytics. And if we get enough response, more and more people will become familiar with tonight's episode. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list. Go to the 7th name that pops up and reach out to that person tonight with a phone call. Not an email, not a text message, not an inbox message, but a phone call. Let that person know what they mean to you. Because as my dear friend David Friedman says, another great songwriter, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And you never know what someone else is going through at this moment. And before we end tonight, Kiki, I want to give you the final word. Anything that you want to say about anything that we talked about tonight that you want to build upon? Anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had? Or just any message that you want to put out to everyone that's listening right now? And then I'm going to leave the screen because I have a special request that you said yes to. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I just, want to just say to everybody to be good to yourself, be gentle, be kind, enjoy life, and I'm gonna play this song for you.
Thank you. And I want to say good night, everyone, but stick around. This is for me. Thank you.
lot of world to see. We're after the same rainbows in just around the bend. My huckleberry friend, moon, river, and me. Same rainbows and just around the bend, my huckleberry friend, moon, river, and me.